Welcome to the SPL Rundown. I'm your host, Apamapam, here with my three wonderful analysts, Frost, Wraithyn, and we have a special guest this week, that is Cardiac, the coach of E United, will be joining us. Stick around later for my interview with Sam4Soccer2. But first, let's get started with the first set of the week, which is Sanguine versus SSG. And we see that Sanguine get Netroid and Netroid's Freya and Nemesis for Apamapam, and they still sort of get methodically stomped by SSG here. What are your first thoughts on this set?
Who wants to go first? Because I've got some laying into them that I want to do. So I start with the positive stuff first, maybe.
Yeah, it seemed like a whole lot of meta slaving struck again.
That wasn't really positive at all.
Not the positive stuff. I mean, the positive stuff is they're playing in the SPL.
Yeah, I heard
they're not at the bottom.
I heard someone say it quite well. Sanguine, the first phase, played like they had something to prove, like they wanted to prove that they belonged in the SPL. They're still playing like that. They're not really playing like they belong to be in the top three. Just, we're happy to be here is all.
Yeah, that could be true. I think SSG definitely had a strategy going into the game by letting them have Freya. Obviously, you don't want to have that pick just go completely uncontested. And so I think they did well picking into that dual lane, pressuring that out, and kind of running it that way.
What do you think was their thought process in letting them have Freya? I say that because they picked Hebo jungle and a Muzenkab mid both games as well. Is there something that they were trying to do there? I think they might have also gotten Jingwei into Freya both games as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think Vote's probably very comfortable in that matchup.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure if the Hebo was specifically into the Freya or whatever, but it might have just been a comfort pick that week for Cherry.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they definitely had something planned when taking away the Ama, taking away the Jingwei, and playing it like that. Also, like the Xing Chen's pretty decent into Freya as well. You're gonna be forcing something every time you go on her, so
yeah,
I think they played it pretty well.
One other thing I wanted to note is that they basically had the same teacup except for the support, and Raffer switched from Xing Chen to Ganesh between game 1 and 2. So it seemed like they were really happy with that team comp into the Freya.
Right, they're very consistent with their picks, like through this set and a few prior, and even some in phase 1, even some in season 6. Once they have a comp, they're just like, all right, we're sticking to this. They feel like Sanguine at the final level.
Yeah, I think that's probably something where they work on it throughout the week and they just find the characters that they're feeling most confident on and just kind of go with that. It is pretty interesting that a lot of their games, they do just run back the same drafts, but they're very consistent and they're very dominant at what they do. And if it works for them, it works. I think SSG are probably one of the best performing teams right now.
The last thing that I wanted to mention and bring up here was I think this was the first Chiron mid game that we've seen in phase 2. And I know the analysts were saying that Chiron is an underrated god, so look out for it. So what do you think of the first Chiron sighting that we've seen?
Not like that. Not the way. Yeah, no, that was a game 2 Shinto. That build, I get what he's going for. That's the season 6 ADC mid build. That was for like an on her or whatnot, but you can't be building that, baby. It's the Fail Not Soul Eater build right now with all the pen changes. It's the before they took away Fail Not and made it completely irrelevant. I don't think you go that build on a Chiron, really. There's not much cooldown to offer the utility that he has in the kit. It's kind of lackluster for me.
Yeah, Chiron can definitely be one of those picks that completely turns a draft, but I don't know if it was the best pick this game. And yeah, I guess he didn't really execute it to as well as he could have either. It is kind of a difficult character to play in mid. You do have to time your ults well. Obviously, if you're just sitting in your ult, you're going to get gone on very easily, so you have to be timing those well and try and get as much damage off as you can there. It probably is a pick that we will see more of, but yeah, this game it probably was just not executed well.
Well, he was going to try and blow somebody up because you got the Transcendence, Warrior Tabai, Brawlers, Crushers, Heartseeker, Titans. He just wanted, I'm assuming, Panatom to Nem ult somebody and then just blow them up completely.
Yeah.
I don't think he was really planning for much outside of a team fight combo scenario.
Yeah, he used it like a Reginald. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right, any final thoughts on this set before we move on to Radiance versus PK?
I hope to see the Chiron again, but I hope he tweaks that build a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to just see some diversity out of Sanguine. I think they play like I almost want to say it's probably completely arrogant to say this, but like it's almost like SSG just knew what they were gonna pick and how they were gonna play and how to play around it. And we talked about that 2 weeks ago, Frost, where it's just like whenever you settle into a pattern with the things you like to play and the way you like to play, like you become predictable. People could start strategizing around that and against you.
Oh yeah,
I think this is the first time where they really got punished for it because they had the good picks, particularly obviously we got Freya both games, right? Freya Nem, the Horus, which staple god for Rongyu, Raijin, staple god for Shinto. Yarkor is the only one. Again, I've gotten in my fair share of trouble for calling people out for their god puddles, but
do it.
No, I'm not gonna do it this time.
I'll do it.
I'll
do it. Yarkor, tienes como unos 3 dioses, hombre. Tienes que agarrar más.
Yarkor is a decent god pool, but it seems like everybody else is like it was Jingwei, Shibalanki for Netrio at last phase. It is Freya, Jingwei this phase. And if you just know that's what's going to come out, then you can start hedging against that. You build your draft in your head before you even start picks and bans. And I think it bit them. I don't think it was the be all and end all that SSG just outdrafted them. But I think they predicted what they were going to do.
Yeah, I think SSG has really good map play, and they individually can recognize opportunities. And Sanguine's strength, in my opinion, is their team fighting and that they play around each other very well. So I think SSG just maybe matches up against them decently. And if they're able to pick their fights well, know when to farm, and they kind of just rolled both games. I think SSG just is really decent at knowing when to farm and when to fight. And you've seen a lot of games where they're maybe even downing kills.
Yeah.
But they're even in gold or up in gold.
Sure.
And that's something they're really strong at.
Moving on to Radiance versus PK, and this set was a pretty crazy, almost base race, I guess you could call it, in game 1, and then pretty much a stomp by Radiance in game 2. What'd you guys think of Paul's crazy Heimdall backdoor play?
I think they just wanted that game to end. That's just.
Yeah, but what was the game time on that? Like 57 or something?
It was
like
long.
That? Yeah.
It was.
They don't have the game times on the site, and that is frustrating. But
yeah, that game was pretty back and forth. I'd say in the mid to late game, and those games can be taxing. And if you see opportunities where you could potentially backdoor, I know PK tried to backdoor multiple times in the final few minutes of that game.
Yep.
You try and see opportunities. I think kind of they just wanted it to be over as well. They are an aggressive and calling team, but yeah, this game it didn't work out for them.
Taxing. He's like taxing. My man Benji's brain was melted after that game. Next game dies to backharp. He's like, I don't know if I don't know what the thought process was there, but I would say he probably was feeling mentally fatigued from the first game.
Yeah. I think it was interesting because if I'm remembering correctly, it's like they didn't have a mid Phoenix and the Titan was like it had like 1,000 HP, right? Like they were super pushed out. So you almost got to think of like if you have the option, you almost kind of have to go for it because your chances of defending anyway are 5%.
I think the Titan had like close to 20% HP. I think it was even worse than
it's enough where you 5-man rush in and you can get enough CC. I mean, unless somebody pulls off just an absolute nuts counterplay, which I don't think anybody on their team, like maybe a good Ganesh ult would have stopped it, but
yeah, especially against Zap. That's his karma. We've known he loves to base race, and now I think the last, I want to say like 3 or 4 base races that he's been a part of, he's lost. But before that, he was just Zap's gonna get your base. That's it.
I almost wish Paul had picked up like he didn't even need to get like a 500 pot, but if he'd thrown like an Odibo on or something like that to give him an extra attack speed, I think he actually might have taken it. Because at that point, you don't need movement, right? They're either going to kill you,
Yeah,
or you're going to kill the Titan, and another 40%, and I think he takes it. Over the physical power off Warrior Tabby. So I'm surprised he didn't just like really commit to it and go all in.
Well, probably a lot of things going on in the heat of battle, I imagine.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
It had to have for Zap to get anti-heal.
One thing I wanted to mention is I think this is the first time we've seen Paul basically exclusively play Hunters, and this is the first time I've ever seen him really play Neath in the mid lane. What do you think on Paul's Neath and Hunters in the mid lane in general? Is that something that's now becoming more meta?
I think it's boring. I hate it. I think it's boring, right? Like anytime you're dropping like the big mage fight turning ultimates out of the game in favor of just like pressure,
yeah,
it's boring to me, right?
So like Cupid.
I want a world where it's like Kukulkan, Thoth, Ra,
Ew.
Scylla. Like give me like the big one shots that like change the tide of a game, not some like calculated Neath ult to pick somebody off. I mean, it's like watching paint dry.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to see him pick up the Neath in game 2 when I thought the Medusa would be going to him actually and Zap would be taking the Neath. But I mean, it must have been something they had been practicing, and yeah, the double hunter strat with the Hebo must have been something they had been practicing all week. It is a little interesting because yeah, as you say, like last year, he would usually just stick to his mages. So he's trying to diversify a little bit. He's even picked up the Morrigan this year, which I wouldn't have expected him to play. But yeah.
Do you think they put him on the Neath?
Didn't he have
like
an
if the
ult?
Hebo was originally meant for him?
Ooh.
And then as they got further into the draft, they were like, wait a second.
It could be a flex pick for them for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's a duelist. Every duelist has a Neath.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's just something to prove. I kind of like it though, just because it puts more pressure on the other team to actually have an answer. I don't like Kukulkan because it's like we're going to concede all pressure, and then when they come for our towers, we're just going to hit them with the ult. With the Neath, it's sort of okay. A play is going to be made within the next 60 seconds because that ult's coming back up. We have to do something now, or we have to be ready for it. So it just kind of keeps the pace going constantly. I do enjoy more small pressure, constant fighting over let's farm for 30 minutes and then go for it. Except I do think we do a little too much damage right now because we're farming more and the fights are not lasting nearly as long.
Sure.
Yeah, I will say that the Cabrakan pick from Aurora in that second game was very smart. It is a character that he has played from time to time, but in that draft specifically, I really like the Cabrakan.
All right, moving on. Third game this weekend was Ghost versus Renegades. And this was a 3-game set again, which I think Ghost is sort of out of quite a few of. And I guess of the 3 games, 2 of them have been 3-game sets. But another sort of sloppy little game, losing pretty late on in game 2. What's going on with this Ghost roster? Is there still a little fine-tuning that needs to be done?
No, I think that's what we're witnessing, is that they kind of like do the one game, so that's a buffer, and then the second is experimenting. And then the third one is like, okay, we either did the fine-tuning for the second game, or we're just going to close this one out before we lose it all. Sure. It's like teams like Radiance, teams like SSG, teams like Ghost, I think they are more willing to sort of push strats in a live environment just to try and see how other teams are going to react to it. They have no fear of actually losing games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was either one of two things. One, they came out and crapped on RNG so hard in the first game that they were like, easy dub, whatever, play whatever you want, and kind of didn't take the second one seriously. Or like Frost said, that they were literally trying strats out live.
Well, I think it was a little
that
bit.
Too, though, they're troll as hell.
Yeah, there was a little bit of trolling.
That's why I lean to that, right?
They're
like,
super disrespectful.
Yeah, I mean,
after they stopped the first
we're
game.
talking Mike, Panda, Twig, right? Who are 3 of the biggest trolls that we have in the scene, right? And you blow somebody out by that big of a lead. It was like what, like 20K?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost 20K.
Well, and even in game 2, they were like fairly ahead, if I remember correctly. Like they had taken all the towers and they were pushing to end the game, and they kind of overextend a little bit. And if you overextend too much in the late game, you might lose the game on it, which is what happened.
Yeah, in game 2, Ven was also playing the Persephone.
Mhm.
Solo was on the Thor, and Barrow obviously was popping off on Jingwei. So I think their pick ban was a lot better in that game. They let the Persephone go through, which is maybe what they were kind of banking on, trying to play against Persephone in a live match.
Yeah.
And she just does so much damage. And obviously the Thor offers what was he playing in game 1? I honestly forget, but the Wukong.
Yeah.
They're similar, but the Thor obviously offers a little bit more there in terms
Sure.
of getting on the carries.
Yep.
So I think maybe in just a couple fights went wrong for Ghost in the late game, and Renegades were just able to push their lead, which give them credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing that came out of this set in general was the shit talking on Twitter. I said it. What was it? Was it last week, Frost? You and I were talking about how everybody is like, "Oh, GG, well done, good sir." The fantastic contest, right?
Yeah.
And finally, Sam comes over the top and he's like, "GG, the better Thor won," and I was like, "Oh, like come on, give me more of that."
I'm all about it. There's
Tell him
egos
his
on this
mom's
team
ugly.
for sure.
Just
I
do
don't
it.
I don't know about that.
Nah.
I do think though this set was training grounds for Ghost, seeing how Persephone kind of works, because RNG banned it and then picked it the next 2 games.
Okay.
It seemed like Ghost didn't even really care. They're just like, all right, let's see how we can play into one.
Yeah. The last thing I want to mention about this game is in game 3, we saw 4 sledges picked up by Ghost. Is this some classic sledge abuse by the Ghost boys here?
I don't know if they're memeing. I don't know if they actually like it.
No, because Twig always opts for like on every mid laner, he opts like a 3rd item, health item, or defense item. Almost every single time it's a toxic blade or winged blade or relic dagger or something like that.
Yeah, he's always kind of built like that.
Sure.
Fine, okay, it just makes sense on the Ama. And then who was the last one? PBM on a
Horus.
Warrior support.
Yeah.
Warrior support. Yeah, you're gonna build a sledge. If you can buy a sledge, you build it. Right? It's pretty much the deal. I don't know that I like it on the Thor.
Yeah, it's a nice core item.
I don't know if I like it on the Thor so much. I'm a big Void Shield fan. I guess Final K already had one, but
he might have been building one. He's got like either part of a shifters or a void here.
Yeah, it looks like he was either going shifters or because that's not the tier 2 of void is the warded shield.
Sure.
One with
Any final thoughts about this set, guys?
No, I was pretty surprised to see that it was going to 3 games, but I mean, I guess we took Ghost to 3 games as well.
Sure.
But no, I honestly was not surprised by the outcome in the end. I think the sledge thing kind of got memed a little bit, but it might end up just being very meta, as Ghost tends to make things. I think on supports, especially, getting like first item sledge makes you super strong, and on the Horus and Mike piloting the Horus, I think that's kind of just like what he wants to do. That item's kind of made for him, and it makes him be able to play super aggro and kind of solo people once he gets that item online. Coupled with the CCR boots as well, you know, he's max or 40% CCR into like the tier support kind of. So I don't know if that was his thought process there or what, but
it makes sense.
Yeah.
This week, I had the pleasure of sitting down with my good friend, the jungler for Ghost Gaming, Sam4Soccer2, to talk about being a world champion, how Phase 1 and Phase 2 have started off, and looking forward to Worlds this year. Please check it out. Hey guys, I'm here with my good friend Sam4Soccer2, the jungler for Ghost Gaming, here to talk about Worlds Phase 1, Phase 2, maybe looking forward to this next Worlds that's happening as well. So first of all, congratulations on winning Worlds in 2019. How's that feel now? I asked the same question to Neil. Kind of have Worlds finalists back-to-back weeks, but how does it feel now, 6 months in, now that Worlds is over? How are you feeling about it?
About Worlds, I mean, still
Yeah.
feel good about it, but I don't know about it specifically. Like, kind of just looking to the future, to the next Worlds, rather than like thinking about the past one.
Sure. Have you finally turned on the RGB on your Worlds trophy at all?
I think it's actually a mess to figure out. I don't know, but I don't think I ever figured
the
out.
batteries in there.
No, one of my friends tried to work it out, and I think he couldn't. I don't know.
Oh man, that's
It was too annoying.
Sure. So phase one, and like basically you're coming in with a new team. You're the sort of lone change that happened to this team. How is that in terms of meshing with basically a team that's already put together, that sort of has their roles defined and their relationships have they know each other a lot better. I mean, I'm not saying, obviously I'm sure you guys know each other pretty well anyway, but how did that go at the beginning, and now how is it going anyway as well?
Generally it's definitely easier than like if you had a full new team of like completely new players that have never played together, because I'm just kind of fitting in. It's still like a jungle role, so it's, I guess, a little tougher than just like maybe if you fit in a solo laner or something. But I kind of think that generally if you have a bunch of good players together, it'll be easy to just get used to each other, because I don't know, just good players always, you don't necessarily think the same, but it's pretty easy to start to mesh.
Sure, yeah, and I'm sure everyone always like respects each other and their ideas. So
Yeah,
it's always,
exactly.
And that helps, especially when you recognize each other's talent. And I'm sure playing with other world champions is probably a good thing as well.
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, I think we actually just think about the game pretty similarly as a whole, so that's also like a pretty easy like way to synergize quickly.
Sure. All right, moving on to phase one. I know you guys didn't finish first in phase one, but I think it was a relatively good, and especially with you guys winning phase one playoffs. Is that something? I know Mike likes to talk about getting first seed a lot. Is that something that is also on the front of your list in terms of priorities for the phases? Is getting that first seed, or is it just mostly looking towards the tournaments?
Yeah, I personally just mostly look towards the tournaments. I think it's like a nice like accolade, I guess you could say, right?
Sure.
It's not too like obviously getting first is just good in like any respect, but it's definitely just less important because there's not like you don't really get too much from it aside from like seeding wise, I guess, for some tournaments.
Well, I mean, this tournament was kind of special because there was that choosing dynamic.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That does bring another factor, which makes it a bit nicer. But still, like, I mean, you'd rather be choosing than not, I guess. But I don't think it's a big deal.
Sure. So speaking of the choosing dynamic in the playoffs, when I talked to Aurora, he seemed to think that you guys might have been a little bit scared of Sanguine and were a little bit relieved to face off against SSG. Any comments on that?
I mean, I don't think that's true. We just kind of thought that they wouldn't choose us for sure.
Yeah.
And I think they're just both good teams, but we wanted to beat like SSG more so than Sanguine just because of how the way the season worked out.
He also seemed to think that you guys had been scrimming a little bit together because he felt that Sanguine had been taking some of your guys' tendencies, especially in terms of like maybe playing a little bit faster in the early game rather than just waiting for team fights.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do scrim them. I think they're one of the teams we like to scrim the most, but we scrim like a good variety, I'd say. And it's not just like one team here or there. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they took some tendencies for sure.
Okay, moving on to phase two, I guess. It's a really long phase. What do you think of this new 14-week triple round robin that we got going on? Is that something that piques your interest, or are you a little peeved that you have to play for so long? How are you feeling about it?
Personally, I think I don't care too much. I don't really think it's like super exciting or anything. But I don't think an extra like set for each team is that big of a deal necessarily for me. But I think like Mike and maybe some other people on my team at least have said like they personally don't like it. It's just a lot bigger chance for like burnout, throughout the split and things like that. which I think it'll happen for sure for some teams and players.
Yeah.
It's just hard to stay motivated for that long
Yeah,
and care
14
about every
weeks
single
is-
game.
Yeah, 3.5 months basically. It's just
Yeah.
it's a really long time.
Yeah, I think it would be bad generally if like you were really hard, like wanted to win every single set, you know, and you
Yeah.
like put your all into all of them. I
Mhm.
think in that sense you kind of have to be a bit more relaxed during the split. Otherwise, you're definitely bound to get burned out.
Sure.
But yeah, I personally don't mind. I'm pretty like good at doing that type of thing anyway. So
Yeah, when I talked to Neil last week, he said like basically for the first 5 weeks, even if like you can experiment a little bit and
yeah,
test things out, because even if you don't win the sets necessarily, if you gain useful information, that can really help in
Yeah,
getting
for sure.
hot closer to Worlds. And
Yeah.
like we've been talking about, the parity in the league is pretty. There's a lot of it, so if you get yourself there to Worlds, you got a chance.
yeah, agreed.
Speaking about the jungle, Wraithyn recently put out a video with the PK guys sort of explaining how the jungle shrine works.
Yeah.
Is that something that you guys are focusing a lot on in terms of like being efficient at stacking that and claiming all the stacks? Is that something that's like you guys talk about on a regular basis, or that you guys try to prioritize in any way?
Maybe a little. Like honestly, right before that video came out, I like didn't know how the shrine worked the best myself. Like I figured it out a bit before the video came out, like a day or
Sure.
two, right?
Yeah.
Like completely.
Yeah.
And like that knowledge is good to have generally, but it doesn't really change that much, I don't think.
Yeah. 'Cause
Like I had an
it's just
idea, like I thought maybe it was per camp or whatever. Like I was like,
Mhm.
oh, blue's maybe bugged because they're only giving like one stack of it, or
Yeah.
like not a stack, like one like third of a stack or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like per minion, so that type of information doesn't help that much. It's like good to have an understanding, but doesn't change that much. I think it's good to like maybe focus jungle a little more, but you don't want it to like get in the way to ganks and stuff still. So it's still a
Yeah. Is it
balance.
not? It's just like something extra on your like regular jungle path still.
The shrine, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean it's just one auto.
Yeah.
Maybe I hit it a little too much sometimes, but it's pretty bad if it gets overstacked. So just one
mean-
auto on the way to speed or backs is kind of worth it.
I feel like these videos are trying to emphasize that maybe you can optimize your jungle pathing to be able to take advantage of like fully stacking the shrine or things like that. Is that something that's been talked about at all, or is that something that is going to take a little more playing with and feel to sort of get how that goes? Because I imagine that takes like the communication of the whole team being like, all right, this camp is down, this camp is down, this camp is down. All right, now we know our jungle shrine should be fully stacked, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you need to go that far necessarily.
That's going too
The
deep.
thing is, yeah, I think it's just so easy to hit the shrine. It's just one auto, right? That
Yeah.
you don't need to like try to optimize it too much. Because
Okay.
like one auto really won't slow you down too much. Maybe if it was back to 3 autos in the price, you
Mhm.
could try to. But even still, I don't think you need to go that far still.
Okay. That's good. I don't know. You never know how in depth the pros really go on some of these
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
So it's always good to ask, especially when there's other community content that is sort
Mhm.
of pushing people in that general direction. Speaking of, it being a long phase and things like that, there seems to be kind of a little bit of sloppiness from you guys in a couple of these
Yeah.
sets. I know Mike especially is a big proponent of running it down, but sometimes you run it down a little too hard, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like both of the games that you guys have lost have been like just a little bit of overcommitment to getting some objectives or getting some kills that
Mhm.
sort of turns against you in the late game.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the good thing about like our play style is like we're always on the front foot
Yeah.
normally, right?
Yep.
And we're the one looking for stuff. We're looking for stuff. So it feels like basically any game that we've lost or like end up being way closer, it's kind of on us to. It was on us to like we were the ones throwing,
Sure.
because we're the aggressors. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just maybe at the beginning of the split we only practiced like the week of those SPL games, the first week, and
Yeah.
then I mean last week I don't know.
Well, I mean, you win the
Yeah.
sets, so you can't complain too much.
Yeah. As long as we're
obviously.
winning the sets, we're fine with it for now. Obviously, like towards Worlds, we'd like to be way cleaner and not making like, mistakes like that. But
Right. Well, long
we're not
phase,
too
right?
worried at the moment.
There's
Yeah.
the time to clean it up. If there was any time to be sloppy, it would probably be early on in the phase.
Yeah, for
right
sure.
now. So here's a question I had. You said you like to play on the front foot as a
Yeah.
team, and is that something that influences your team comp, or do you feel like you could draft another team comp to be, let's say, a little more reactive, and you guys would still be able to play that playstyle relatively successfully.
I mean, I think we can play any playstyle pretty successfully. Like, there's a lot of games where I think our comps like are later game focused, but we're still the ones being proactive and getting leads with those comps, and it makes it look like we're just like hard picking for it, but we're not really. It's just kind of they're giving us openings that we're taking advantage of. And
So
those are the
like,
games
you're
that
just
end up
like
being like,
taking every little inch, and it adds up to being a mile.
yeah,
instead
exactly.
of just like,
Especially if you have like a comp that's more focused later games.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of the times those are the games that are the most stompy. It seems like for us.
Sure.
Not always, but like I could be like a Hunbats or something if we're just a little more late, and you just get a couple picks, and then the game's kind of just snowballs really quickly because I don't know the full reason, I guess, but
Do you guys like actively look for those type of snowbally things? Like, if you see that you're getting a lead in a certain lane, is that something that you prioritize to snowball that lead?
yeah, I mean we're always trying to just push the lead farther,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like continuing your aggression in one spot, or maybe you think they're gonna aggress somewhere, and if you shut that down while your other like lane's going well still, then you kind of just close them out completely. But yeah, I mean there's definitely a bunch of ways to push leads, and we're kind of always looking to be the aggressors,
Sure.
at least in positions we can.
Yeah, I know you said you sort of have been playing a lot of later game team comps more, but it seems like your playstyle is always be aggressive as early as possible. And
Yeah,
take
yeah.
Whatever, not even take whatever lead, but just like aggressively pursue the lead. You know, and I think a lot of times people, especially like the casters, sort of tend to just stick with, oh, rival is like the best at the early game, which I think you guys are the best at the early game, but you're also picking for these late game team comps and stuff too. Is that something? You know, do you guys hear that noise and be like, oh, you know, we're good at the early game? Or I know like last year on PK, they were like, oh, these guys are the best at base defense and things like that. You know, is that something that you think about at all? In like, does that affect your thinking also in terms of like moving throughout the phase and like making changes to the meta, or like, you know, if
Not really, I don't think.
Yeah, you just are like doing your own thing for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, like you'll hear I think they overemphasize it and say like, oh yeah, if you like get these guys to late game, like they're not that good. But I don't really think that's true. You know. I mean, yeah, you like notice what they're saying, but it doesn't really change how you view the game, really.
Okay, that's interesting because I feel like a lot of fans sort of I don't know if they are like waiting on the words of the caster, but you know, there's a little bit of you know, that's sort of our window into the world, so to speak.
Right? Yeah, it makes sense.
So I think a lot of fans get those opinions, and it's kind of, I don't know. You wonder if those are actually true and real all the way. Like, I'm sure there's, you know, a kernel of truth to it, but you know, there are probably a lot of other factors that go into some of these things.
Yeah, for sure. It makes sense how like those like I guess storylines, you could call them, like are made and like continued, but they're definitely not always, like, in my opinion, completely true.
Sure.
Like you said, maybe it starts with like a true point, like yeah, we like to play early game, but then it's like develops to like, oh, that's all they can do, right? They get behind, they're just bad.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think that matters more than sort of even your seeding in the phases? Like, if you sort of get hot in the qualifiers or get hot at the end of the season going into the qualifiers, does that, I don't know, it seems like that sort of stuff helps teams a lot more going into Worlds than just like being at the top of the league and maybe like hosting for those last 2 weeks.
I think it's like both are pretty important. Like obviously, if the team's first and they get hot at the same time, like they'll have the bracket like favoring them, as well as like just being like obviously hot at the same time. So like
that is true.
It's a bit of both. Because like just because a team gets hot, like at the end of the split doesn't mean they're gonna win guaranteed. You know, that just means they'll do well.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't think it's just like one or the other.
All right, I think I'm all out of questions here, Sam. Is there anyone you want to shout out or give props to, or anything you want to soapbox or rant about? Is there you know, the floor is yours to say whatever you need to say.
Yeah, I mean, just shout out to all the Ghost fans out there. Always got to give them a shout out.
Yeah, shout out to our
it's great.
analyst Frost, who is a
Yeah.
#1 Ghost fan.
Yeah, I think that's about it, though.
Yeah. All right, man. Thanks a lot for doing this interview. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
It was great fun.
Yeah.
I hope the rest of the season goes well for you, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we can see each other at Worlds this year.
Yeah, hopefully, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, though.
Thanks a lot. Catch extended cuts of player interviews and analyst discussion on the Apam Productions YouTube page and on twitch.tv/Apam Productions. Follow at Apam Productions on Twitter for the latest updates and to see future guests. All right, let me get a nice sip of water. All right, boys, PK versus E United, and this one I think has to be summed up with set mid and Paul on Morgan. PK looking very good in this set against your boys, Cardiac. What are your thoughts on the set mid? Is this something that we're going to see more and more of? Assassins in the mid lane?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the set was the main issue in our game specifically. He did obviously do very well in the late game situation, but we were obviously super behind at that point.
Sure.
There was a play in mid where Scream Neja ulted him and Hurry was under him with Olo and he got out 1 HP. I think that if they were able to get that kill early on, that could have swung the game a little bit more in our favor. The set was definitely an interesting pick. Having them played it in the jungle previously,
Yep.
I think they were kind of just going to try that out in mid this game, and it worked for them.
Wraith Frost?
PK versus E United. Okay, then. Oh, that one. Yes. Fresh in my mind where it's first Paul goes Morrigan, and then he decides he's just going to pick the character that he wanted to play anyways.
Yes.
Yeah, I think he got a taste of set in the first game with some ults, and was like, yeah, I want to play that again.
Yes. I just want to keep it the whole time. And that one, another thing that kind of stuck out was it seems Zap's kind of getting a little more respectful now. He was way more gung-ho when he started, but now it's just, okay, I'll play it back a little bit, wait it out, even though he is known for his pure bloodlust and getting soloed.
Hey, you mentioned that. I watched the new PK Virtue video that came out this morning, and Chuckles made sure to mention that Zap, I believe, in one of the games against E United, who is usually very proactive about ending, was like, hey, let's pull it back. Let's not overcommit to these things that we don't need to. So that was something that Chuck pointed out as a strength and something that they had learned to, do instead of always going for the end, which we know Zap loves to do.
That's for late game, though, isn't it? It's like late game Zap is so different from early game Zap. It's I don't know what it is that's leading him, and I think that's what the strength was for last year for them winning Worlds. They could facilitate Zap into the late game where he shines as a shot caller. Sure. Because from the duo, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if he's getting antsy, but he's just very gung ho. Except the team just shines so much in the late game once he's making calls.
Yeah, I think in the game 1, he picked up a Genji's on the Oleron, which made it really hard for the Cthulhu and the Ao Kuang to dive him as we kind of wanted. Sure. So that was a decent pickup from him. And yeah, Paul's Mori was really far ahead on the Morrigan, and he had good transforms that game, to be fair. So
you say you wanted Cthulhu to dive him, but he has like a very tanky build. Why, if we're going to be adamant about Cthulhu support, why is it not at least Cthulhu Bruiser? Because we've seen so much like lack of success from a wall, a big fat cow Cthulhu. It's not actually killing anything. Your carries are dying around you. Why so adamant about a tank Cthulhu?
Yeah, I think there has been some games where Snoopy has built more hybrid. This game, he obviously felt like he wasn't doing much in the fights, and he wanted to be as tanky as possible to try and live them. But yeah, there has been some games where he's like built a Divine Ruin into the build to just be able to proc that in his ult. I do think that the more hybrid build is better on Cthulhu support, because what you want to do on that character is get ahead early, play the mid game, and be just like this oppressive force in the mid game where you can't fight into him at all when his ult's up.
I'm not going to be satisfied until I see somebody building him or playing him with Deso. Because that ult, if you're playing him right, is like a guaranteed kill. That cooldown's definitely coming through with the passive. So I'm not gonna give out that like, all right, this is the Cthulhu to watch until I see a Deso.
Yeah, I think he's definitely been more successful in the solo lane in SPL. Earlier on, we were having success with him in support, but as shown in our set so far, it hasn't worked out in SPL. But I think he definitely has merit in both roles. Maybe solo lane is just a little better as he can get his items and get his levels on quicker, and then can rotate into mid and be super strong around gold free fights or buff invades, etc.
Sure.
And you can definitely like pick your fights as a solo laner too. In support, we saw that Snoopy's biggest problem was kind of using ult when he didn't want to, and now you've got nothing left because Cthulhu only shines with his ult.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Any final thoughts about this PK versus United set?
It's nice to see Paul branching out. I did take him for not a one trick, but it's if you're really good with one thing, why let it go?
Mm-hmm.
But people still think that he's a force to be reckoned with because he's getting banned out all the time on that hell.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I think Paul is one of those players in the league where he does force a lot of bans just by himself.
That's kind of the crazy thing about Paul is that PK can pretty much pick whatever they want because everybody else has to waste so many bans banning out Paul that they like the meta stuff just starts getting through.
Yeah, the stuff that he plays very well, he's super top tier at it. And it makes games very hard to win.
All right, then. Moving on to Radiance versus Sanguine. And this, I believe, was another 3-game set, and Sanguine were able to take the second one. But Radiance came through. It was sort of like lopsided in the winner's favor in each game.
Right,
so,
yeah.
Radiance win game 1, Sanguine win game 2, and Radiance win game 3. I don't know if there's really even much to really glean from this. It just seems like you get some early kills and you snowball a lead to win a game. Am I
was game 3 really that lopsided? I feel like that went really long.
Yeah, well,
the first two were lopsided.
Long.
Sure.
I remember that game was long because I had to go to the grocery store. And I was like, Jesus, are they going to close before I get a chance to go?
You sure? That was the Radiance Knights game. Oh, man. The one that almost lasted an hour. These were relatively short, but it was a kind of stomp. First game, second game stomp. Third was more.
Third was more even, but I don't
110K gold is like what? Like you're at like 45, 50 minutes at that point, right?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, the third game was definitely longer, but the first two, I think the first game, their dual lane, or Radiance's dual lane, just completely ran over Sanguine.
Oh, man.
With the emoji Cupid. They were on their purple buffs like instantly, and I think the Heim Terra just did not have enough pressure to keep up with emoji Cupid at all. And Aurora and Cyclone were just solo running that game. And then in game 2, I think Panatom had a really strong game on the Mercury. He was setting up a lot of plays in solo and in mid, trying to get his team ahead. The Hebo was also a very strong pick that Sanguine adapted to.
I forgot to mention too. I was mostly keen on keeping an eye on the duo lanes this last weekend of which ones did the Ghost Minion strat and in which way.
Yeah,
Aurora is a bully because he'll take the Ghost Minion, hits that level 2, and he walks you all the way back to your tower. He does not care for the rest of the wave. He's like, I got my level 2. My hunter's gonna get the rest, and he just bullies you over and over again. Oddly enough, it was Ghost who did not choose to go for Ghost Minions. So that it's like a little duo meta that I'm excited to see how it pans out into these games. But it did seem like Aurora favors the aggressive style, get in your face with that lead, and he knows how to make a lead with it, boy.
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on maybe the character you're playing as well. Like if you have a strong level 2, i.e. like a Hercules or something where you can make plays when you're level 2, maybe you would go for that. But there's some dual lanes where once you hit level 2, you can't really do much more anyways. So they would just rather both hit 2 at the same time, I guess. Or if they feel like they're not going to have the pressure in lane, they might just chill and let them clear.
Sure. One thing that I've been noticing a lot in this duel lane is the rise in Cupid ADCs, and this is something we'll see also in the next set with Wowie, who I think played Cupid in both games in his set. We see Cyclone Spin pick it up twice here. Why is Cupid sort of rising to prominence nowadays?
He hurts, man. He is hard.
Yeah.
That god's been good forever, and he's just getting his limelight now.
Okay.
He's always had like crazy team fight control, and his clear was just like a little weak because of the way you gotta mess around with a heart bomb. And they buff that, and it's like, forget it. God's good now.
Sure.
Yeah, he does a lot of
Playing him
damage.
in mid and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Cupid's pretty strong right now. He does have the sustain, which is kind of unique to a hunter. And yeah, obviously the huge AoE ult is big in the team fight. I do think he has some weaknesses, but yeah, I think the buff change really helped him a lot. And you've seen people who are a little more comfortable on Cupid picking him up.
Cupid jungle. That's all I'm saying. He's strong. He does a lot of damage. I'm serious. He actually has disgusting clear.
Cherry was spamming that for a little while.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts on the Radiance versus Sanguine set?
Then here we got Poseidon, the old Hecate. God dang it. Oh, that stupid ring. with the Typhons, though. The combination of that ring and lifesteal is not... How you feel about that, Cardiac?
Which, Hecate Typhons?
Hecate Typhons and the prominence of it.
On the Poseidon specifically, or just in general?
The Poseidon in this game, but also just...
Yeah, I think this is the first game where we've seen Poseidon mid pick up a Hecate, and I actually do like the build he went. I maybe would have preferred the Typhons before Toxic Blade, but honestly, that build is very strong, 3 to 4 items in, and it's very hard to... And he can sustain like outside of fights, like heal back up, come back in. I think it's a pretty strong build. And Typhons plus Boots plus Hecate together really synergize.
I was playing it after the set. I was playing some games and I could not win for the life of me. I'm on my best gods. I've played ADC for years. Nothing could come of it. I switched to Chronos and Poseidon. Hecate, Typhons. It felt like I couldn't lose.
Yeah.
I don't play
once
a
you
lot
get
of mage
Hecate
ADCs.
online, the item feels really strong.
Are you becoming a Hecate abuser, Frost?
You have to. You have to be in this stupid meta because you could press all these buttons, do everything right as a regular hunter. But I was getting outplayed. I was getting outfarmed and everything. But no, once that combo comes through,
Sure.
two items, and you're full build.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we talked about the Hecate Poseidon now, because I was going to ask about it for the next set. But let's talk about the next set now with SSG versus Obey. And in both these games, Obey start off strong in the early game, but it just seems like when it comes to the mid game or the late game, SSG is the best in the league at this point. Early on in phase 2, they look to be the best in just sort of suffocating the map and winning pretty methodically.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I was pretty surprised to see how well Obey had cleaned up their early game, and they really had a strategy going into these games. I think it was kind of a similar thing where they're like, we're going to let them have Freya, and we're just going to try and out-pressure it and try and win before that Freya can get online. And it looks pretty strong from them, obviously both games, but yeah, there was just something like you kind of just knew that SSG was going to win, even that Obey got ahead, and that's tough to say for Obey and for Obey fans, but SSG are just so strong right now, and they know when to pick, as I said before, they know when to pick their fights, and they're very strong at it.
I want these guys to do well so bad.
Hey,
SSG, they're doing okay.
Game 2 was a lot better. I think Game 2, they were on par for a lot of the game, and the team fight in the middle of the game to the end of the game just sort of doesn't break their way.
It was
I think-
that last team fight as well, where
Sure.
Cherry.
on the Phoenix.
Yeah, Cherry did so much in that fight. I don't think Sino got his ult off or whatever, so that kind of ruined it for him. But Cherry just still like blinked in and got a 1 on both carries and did like half their health.
Yeah, that was tough to watch.
We've got Sino off of Warriors now, though. That's
He
improvement.
Finally.
kept up with his promise that he made on Twitter, right?
He did. He did. You might go back on it now that he didn't. He didn't win, but
I think it's weird that of all the gods that he could have picked to come off the Warrior train on, he went with Kali. I don't really find her particularly
he takes it off of Cherry.
fun. Yeah, you're right. I don't know.
I don't
feel
even
like-
know if like Sino has a Cali.
I think Sino does. I feel like I've seen enough of
I'm sure he's got everything.
the morning Q Callies on the stream.
Yeah, I think he's traditionally been a very unique player where he sticks to his one thing, but he plays it super well, and you know he's going to play what he wants to play, but he still will just outplay you and outskill you on that. But he's trying to switch maybe to these hyper carries, as the Warriors weren't going that well. I'm not sure if that's really his play style or not.
It's all like, there's never been like a player character combination that was ever so dominant though for a long time. I figured he'd be. I didn't think he'd be so headstrong to try and kind of maintain what he was doing. I guess it is. It is more so like die on this hill or die on the plains of trying to adapt to the meta. I guess he just prefers the elevation.
Last thing that I saw that was interesting. Oh, go ahead, Wraith.
I was just gonna say it almost felt like they got the lead that they wanted, that they felt they deserved, and they got so caught up in the fact that they were ahead and pushing and executing cleanly that they just slipped up, took the wrong fight, and it just all blew up on them all at once. Particularly in that second game, right? I mean, they had that game in the bag. Yeah, nothing's ever in the bag, but they were gearing up to close it out. And it just all went to hell very quickly for them. And I think it's almost like that, like, I don't want to say like, we've never been here before. What do we do? Right? Like, wait a minute. No. This game was supposed to be over 10 minutes ago with us getting our asses kicked, right? Like, you know what I mean? And I feel like you get to that point where you're like, oh damn, like we got to close this game out, and like one mistake and it's over, right? Your lead is gone.
That happened last phase though,
and they were so close, man. It was close.
One thing that I saw that was interesting was Darda's playing the Jingwei mid in both of the games. What are your thoughts on Jingwei as a mid laner?
I hope you're not asking me that because I can't stand her as an any character role anywhere. Just
Is this mostly just to facilitate Freya in the duo lane? Because I think Vote was also able to play Freya in both of the games.
Yeah, it could have been a pick where they were like, we're gonna have Freya. We maybe don't want them to have Jingwei into the Freya, so we're just gonna pick both.
Yeah.
And Dardes has shown proficiency on that character, I think, last season.
Sure.
I don't know if she's super strong in mid or anything. She does, her passive kind of, I guess, synergizes well with mid a little bit, but I think it was something more than the strength of the character. I think it was a draft thing.
Sure.
Do you think it's also part like safety? I feel like these lads, SSG, know the ins and outs of like the Cali matchups now. The comp is just super safe. Freya's in the air. Naja can take you all the way up with it. Jingwei's hard to catch. Ganesh is kind of the only problem, maybe. Wukong leaves.
Yeah.
Aside from the Nuwa, I think they've got everything down packed for Cali
Rama
matches.
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true as well. Yeah,
How's it go,
both carries can just get in the air in the fight and not take damage
Yep.
for a few seconds.
That's what I want to see with Cthulhu comps, man. You need a carry that can just leave the fight for a little bit while Cthulhu's wreaking havoc.
Mhm.
What were you guys' thoughts on Dolson's words there, though? The joke him and Mifflin had near the end. Did you guys catch that?
I caught that. I thought it was just a joke, but you know, if someone feels offended by it, who am I to tell them that they shouldn't be offended?
See, now
That's mostly how I feel
think,
about it.
yeah, I think the joke is fine. The joke itself was fine. I think who it was directed at might have been too premature. I think it's a joke to be made. I just don't think they made it at the right time to the right team.
No.
No.
No, I know. I mean, I think it's. I don't know. I like because I was on both sides. Like I said, the clip of me reacting to it because I was floored by it.
Yeah.
Like kind of made the rounds, and I thought it was funny initially, and then after seeing why he's tweeted, I was like, yeah, I kind of understand how that's fucked up. Like we all have jobs here, right? Like if somebody came into our workplace and said you shouldn't be employed, that would probably make you feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
Right. No matter what. It doesn't matter what you do. If one of my customers called up my boss and said, hey, you should get rid of Matt. Right. Like, cause he's just not cutting it. Like that would be, you can point to a lot of things. It just still does not feel good to have that happen. Right.
Sure.
Publicly and in front of thousands of people. So like, I get that.
Yeah.
I also get that you have to create not drama, but you gotta instigate. You gotta call things out. I mean, you look at like
you have to entertain.
You look
right?
at any sportscaster.
Right. It's
look
also
at any sportscaster of any sport, and it's this guy's overpaid. Like look at Skip Bayless and like Skip Bayless is a great example. Steven Smith, right? Like I don't even watch them that much, but you see clips of them coming out and be like, LeBron is a joke, and everybody's like, what? Like
sure.
It's shit like that, and it creates like discussion, but like at the same time, nobody says the Cleveland Browns are shit because everybody knows the Cleveland Browns are shit.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like everybody knows they're dog. They're gonna be dog forever, right? And like it just doesn't need to be
the
said.
Cleveland Browns fans, they have their fingers crossed, right?
You don't think in sports, at least, it might aid to like a competitive environment in a way? Because there's that feeling of it's your job. You don't want anyone saying that, but it's also like it's a meritocracy. You're here, you deserve to be here, and you get what you get.
Sure, I think there's something to be said for that, but I know for a fact in professional sports it's not like that at all, right? Or maybe not entirely, because like I'm friends with Schultz, who's on the Cowboys. I asked him, I was like, do you get the comments about the Cowboys sucking like bother you at all? He's like, no, man, this is like we're going to work. This is our job, right? There's no like, oh man, like the Cowboys, the Eagles, I got a big rivalry. And it's like, no, the fans have the rivalry. This is like 40 players that are at work doing their job, right? Like they don't, and maybe it's different for the SPL, but like, I don't think anybody's like lacing up their sneakers in the morning going, we're taking on Ghost today. Let's do this, man. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think any of that's happening. It's like we're doing our job and we want to win and make money and continue to do what we love instead of going home and working some shit job that we don't want to do.
Oh, man. See, I want the other one. We're taking on Ghost today. Let's go. All right, here I go.
I mean, I think you get hyped up afterwards.
Clocking in, clocking out.
Right? I mean, it's nice. And I don't want to speak for Obey and say that that's how they approach the game or that anybody approaches the game that way. But like, I think it's an overstated thing for the sake of entertainment that, there's some like, I don't know. I apologize to your editor because I like forget what I'm talking about halfway through talking about it. But like, that there's some like greater holy meaning behind like these teams playing each other other than people competing at a job.
Right.
I will say that the Smite scene is smaller than like a sports scene or NFL or whatever exactly. So I think a lot of NFL players or MLB or whatever, they don't pay attention to social media as much. Yeah, and maybe since the Smite scene is smaller, obviously you're going to go on Twitter after the games, and if you see that a commentator kind of was talking down on you like that, especially after the set they had where they probably felt like they should have won games.
True.
Maybe that's kind of what got to them. But yeah, I didn't view it as too much initially either, but
Well,
they take it their own way.
and I was able to ask Sam about this because he's a relatively quiet person, so I wanted to see what his take on sort of what the storylines are and things like that, because that is really the fans' sort of perspective into the world of the SPL comes through the casters and through the storylines
Right.
that they see in the SPL and things like that. And his take was that yeah, of course they hear him, but most of the time players are doing their own thing. They're figuring out with their team how to win the game. And that's really all that they care about for the most part. That's it for the SPL Rundown this week. Be sure to follow us on Twitch and Twitter, and follow our YouTube for extended cuts of player interviews and my talking with the analysts. See us next week at the same time and same place here on Twitch.